Okay, so I'm Jade.
I'm Stuart.
And Stuart, I gather that last week, was it last Friday?
Yeah.
You tried out the art postcards lesson with the worksheets.
Yeah.
So, how did it go?
It went well. The class was very small. There was only 3 students. It's a CAE class. We had been talking about the topic of art, so it fitted in really nicely with what we'd been doing. And yeah, like I said, it went really well. I think they were relieved to kind of get away from exam
CAE
material
books.
and do something else. So generally it went well.
Do you normally only have 3 students in that group?
No, maximum is, well, last week 2 have left. Last week there were 6 on the register. It's now gone down to 4.
Okay. So did you start with anything different, or did you kick straight in with the worksheet?
I kicked straight in with the worksheet. Like I said, we had been dealing with that topic anyway, so it was fine.
So these first couple of questions, did you give them the worksheet with that question on, or did you ask the question first and then give them the worksheet for the brainstorm?
I asked them the question first,
Yeah.
then gave them the sheet and got them to brainstorm. There were only 3, so I got them to do it on their own first and then compare with each other and to explain why they'd chosen the way that they did.
Great.
It worked well. I thought they all had different ideas. They all did it in different ways. Some of them did it kind of the way I did, which was, to think about art in a loose sense and have music and literature and film. And others thought about art as in kind of fine art and did it
painting
in terms of painting and sculpture and stuff like that. So it was kind of interesting that people did it in different ways.
Yeah.
People said, I've written down here, actually I'm not that keen on art. But then they still quite got into it. So even though they said that they weren't keen on it, they still got involved. They were still engaged.
Yeah.
I think just perhaps people sort of defensively automatically say, oh, I don't know anything about art, or I'm not keen on art. But then if you poke and push, they've got something to say on it, because actually art is important for us all, really, isn't it?
How much to what extent do you think the brainstorm bubble supported, encouraged, or even limited people in brainstorming vocab?
Yeah, no, I thought it was good. I thought it encouraged as a lead-in, and I thought it was a good way of getting into the subject. Possibly, it also supported because we came out with, they learnt new expressions, conceptual art, and some other things, other expressions which they didn't know before, and they were able to use later on. So it supported as well. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. I don't think it limited. I thought it supported and engaged the students.
You know that I did the same lesson with Sophie's B2C1 class last week in the afternoon. Yeah. I wondered whether, in fact, for some students, having that format seemed a bit intimidating. Because to start with, in the first, you can see that you've added things in there, but in the first instance, there's quite a lot that they might feel obliged to fill. I
didn't think mine did, but that might have been because of the level that they are CAE, so they're not going to get intimidated, hopefully, by that. And also perhaps because it's been the topic of the last couple of days, so
it's something they're familiar with.
Yeah. But I can perhaps imagine that if you were to go into a lower level class which hadn't thought about that before and then presented them
then
with
it might be quite tough.
I think if you stress, you don't have to fill all the bubbles and you can do it any way you like and set a short time limit.
Yeah.
Then I think it's fine. I think it's good.
Cool. Okay, so you've written on the whiteboard there for the useful language.
Yeah, just put that up on the board.
Before giving them the worksheet?
Just trying to remember now what I did. Oh yeah, no, basically follow this. I didn't give them this sheet. I just asked them, what kind of art they liked. Yeah. Gave out the cards. This is when I put this up so that they could say which ones they liked and didn't like using that. Again, for CAE, they knew that anyway.
Yeah.
But it was interesting. It was useful just to revise the difference between looks and looks like.
Yeah.
I think somebody had forgotten that.
Did you put any examples? Because when I put this up on the board, I put this, but I extended it. So I had, it looks plus adjective.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
okay. That's what I elicited from them, the difference between it looks and it looks like, and got them to think of examples. Yeah.
Did they then use the language?
Yeah, that's a good point. But possibly not. I can't remember now. But yeah, I mean, quite often with these things, they don't.
Yeah.
I think they did, but not greatly. Maybe I suspect perhaps it makes me think of wasn't used. It might have just been the more kind of straightforward ones.
Yeah.
What have I written here? Works really well. Oh yeah, the thing with the cards, what I really liked was when they started to get more engaged and more animated was when they were actually picking the cards up physically.
Yeah.
It was interesting that when they picked them up physically and put this one with this group and this one with this group, and then the other one said, oh, maybe this one can go. And they started...
So you had them working together as a three for that,
Yeah. And when they were organising the cards, that was kind of like the moment of most engagement or most kind of animation.
I think you're right.
Which I thought was interesting, that the physical thing of picking it up, suddenly they get into it that much more.
Because they know what they have to do.
Talking about it. I don't know why. Is that why?
I think it's something. It is something physical. I think it is to do with doing something that's a bit more practical, and you know how to pick up a card and move it over here. And
it's
the rest is
TPR,
creative.
TPR kind of thing. That because you're actually doing it, then you're more engaged
somehow. Yeah.
Maybe. So I thought that was kind of interesting. The way they became even more engaged and animated once they started touching it and moving it around. So the postcards I think are great, and that thing of categorising them into 4 groups of 4 is really good. They were arguing with each other why this is better here and this is better here. Oh no, I think this is better because it's impressionist, and it was with the other one that was an impressionist, and the other one was
it sounds like they responded much better to that than my guys.
Yeah, no, it did. They did. I thought, and I thought this was a really nice segue between the two to the language analysis.
Okay.
I thought that was really nice.
Yeah. Presumably you used the postcards that I had in the paper bag rather than Jess's, because there was a Paul Klee in there.
I did check first to make sure that there was a Paul Klee, otherwise it's not going to work. I snuck that one in there. And it was quite good because that was the one that they were all saying that they didn't like.
Really? Okay.
Which ones do you like or you don't like? And everybody was saying, one person said, and I think others just kind of followed on it, don't like that one, that's just boring. And so then it was quite fun. And one of them said it looks like something a child could do.
Ah, interesting.
So then it was really good when he says he greatly admired the work of children. Yeah. And they were like, oh, is it this one?
So they did manage to guess it?
Yeah, they did. And I thought that was a really nice segue to go from.
Did you give them this handout?
The fun bit.
At all?
So this was when I gave them the handout.
Okay.
Was,
looking at the facts.
Looking at the facts about Paul Klee and then deciding which is the painting by him. So that was when I gave them that. And
how about this? About question 6, the difference between the underlying verb forms. How did that work?
Yeah, it worked fine. I was surprised that I thought that they would have, being CAE, I thought they would be very easy for them just to say, yes, that's, obviously it's past continuous because it's giving background information, but they didn't. So that was quite good that they weren't able to do that. It wasn't too easy for them. No.
So it sounds like it's definitely a C1 level.
I would have thought. I think it depends a bit. I think it'd be fine with the B2 class. As well, I would have thought.
Maybe. Well, the group I had last week was supposed to be B2 / C1, but there were some very low B2s in that group, so half of them were fine with these verb forms, but others really struggled,
Mine were fine with doing this, and this I thought was a bit too easy. But when without this support, just getting them to look at the different verb forms and discuss they couldn't really do very well. But then when you give them the...
So they did need this.
Then this was no problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, how did you find the process of this? Because I've kind of decided to change it a bit.
Okay.
But I'd be interested to hear, first of all, so matching the past forms with the definition, example, sentence and timeline.
Yeah.
The instructions were okay?
The instructions, I think, were fine. The one thing I thought was... was using in progress to describe past progressive or past perfect progressive. So I thought it was too kind of mechanical to be able to see progress, it must be that. So I wondered if you could say incomplete or not finished instead of progress.
Yeah.
If it means the same thing.
Yeah. I'm not sure. I mean, I had thought about putting continuous here.
Yeah.
But I like using progressive because I think it is more closely related to when we use it to describe something in progress. So
I thought I'm fine with that, but I thought then maybe change in progress to something like incomplete
still
or
happening.
Still happening maybe is a better. Yeah, still happening. Yeah. So that it's not quite so obvious.
For a higher level group.
Yeah. Otherwise, I thought it was fine. Did
they do it individually or together?
It worked. I think they did it individually and then they compared.
Okay. So what I'd thought about doing with this was actually printing this out and cutting it up. So you end up with 12 cards that they then match.
Yeah.
One of each type.
Yeah.
And I think that would be more effective in two ways. One, because they can move things around.
Yep.
Whereas when I did it last week, a couple of people made mistakes and then they had to cross out lines and redraw lines and such like. So moving it around, also what you said about the postcards thing, that was quite an interesting point. And then give them the handout with actually the correct...
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. If you do that, you've got to make sure that they then have a hard copy to take away with them.
But it makes sense that the hard copy is clear. Yeah. And I think with their own lines drawn all over it... It's less clear. Absolutely. So you could possibly put lines in between the four. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, make this so that they match up.
Yeah.
And draw a line down, and you give it to them to check their answers or something like that, and then they've got the hard copy to take away. Cool. Yeah, I would agree with you. And this would be nice to have on card. Yeah.
Super.
Exactly that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's good. And the last bit... what did I do? Oh, that was it. That's it. Yeah, they did it individually rather than as a group writing thing.
Okay.
They just did it because there was only 3 of them, so either of us going to have one text or do it individually. And then have 3
so they
texts.
did individual stories.
So they did individual stories because I wanted to have 3 texts so that they could, look at each other's and decide which one was the best. I think that's what I did in the end.
So they wrote the stories out? Yeah,
I didn't give them this.
At all?
Okay. It's too many bits of paper.
Yeah.
I just put that up on the board and some questions.
Cool.
I insisted that they use at least one of the past forms.
Yeah, I think that's fair at that level.
Because I think otherwise it might be forgotten and it's kind of glossed over. So, I made it very clear that you have to use...
It was interesting that some of mine were trying very actively to use them and others just weren't. They were more concerned with the story and then.
Yeah, well, I had a feeling mine were going to be like that, so that's why I wanted to to insist on that. And it worked really, really well. I gave them just quite short, 10 minutes I think it was, time limit to write the story.
So they had all the postcards in the middle of the table.
Yep.
They were all around the same table, presumably.
Yeah.
So then they could choose their postcards without actually moving them.
Yeah.
So the others didn't know which stories.
I didn't do that idea.
Oh, okay.
No, so they did know the stories. The way I did it was they just chose their 3. They wrote their stories, and then we passed the stories around and decided on the best one. Okay. I think
it would have been interesting if all 3 of them had used the 3 same postcards, but then developed their own different stories.
That would have been good. That would have been good.
So collaboratively choose your favourite 3 and then individually write.
And I think that there'll be a few possibilities how you could do it. I think a few twists. It doesn't. Yeah. Like whether doing it individually or collectively, or whether trying to guess which one is which, or deciding on which is the best.
Combination.
I think there's a few different ways that you could do it.
But that's one of the nice things about it, is you can then, as a teacher, absolutely. You've then got that choice.
You could adapt it a little bit. You could make the decision that I think this will work better with my group, and so I'm going to go for that. It's really nice.
I didn't hand this out either. I didn't this final page with 8 and 9, but it as a lesson, I don't want to lose it, because I think if anything else, it's quite a nice sort of guidance for teachers. And what I've tried to do, and what I tried to do with the last one, is design the worksheets such that they could be used for self-study if necessary. Although I'm not providing the answers here, but they act in themselves as kind of teacher's notes, because I know that I quite frequently, a worksheet could be my thread of a lesson, that I don't need to write down a plan of what I'm doing, because I know roughly on the worksheet what I'm going to include and develop and so on. So I think it kind of has that.
I think that this works as teacher's notes, doesn't it? It's not necessary, and as long as they've got that and some of the questions on the side on the board, then that's fine.
But then similarly, I guess you could give that for homework. Say do part 8 for homework, or And my guys didn't write their stories. It was just spoken, and then I got them to rotate and share their stories. But they were, I've struggled with that group quite a lot. Sophie has the same issue with them, but they're not very imaginative. So,
but
cool.
Definitely, I think that's a really essential part of the lesson. I think it kind of draws in the grammar point and also the creativity kind of thing with the storytelling. And so I thought it was a really nice part of the lesson. And it's good to have a change of focus. They've been
quite
speaking and quite free, and then looking at the grammar, and nice to bring those two elements together with the writing.
I wonder if there's a way that the vocabulary could also be incorporated into the writing stage. I mean, the vocabulary is on the topic of art, so it's sort of stimulating discussion about art. Could that be also... that kind of ties the story then into being somehow related to the topic of art, which is a bit limiting, isn't it?
Yeah, I like the way that they can take the story any way they want to.
Yeah.
I mean, I think this works with the vocab in part 1. It is useful for the questions in part 2.
Yeah.
A little bit, in terms of depending on
if
you get stuff on landscape, portraits.
Yeah.
I remember that coming up.
Maybe it doesn't need to.
Actually, that came up in here as well with the how do you describe that position? So that's quite interesting that this is portrait and this is landscape.
Yeah. I don't know why I chose that, but
interesting. Yeah, but it just came up because I followed the same shapes on the board and just naturally drew.
So they asked,
and then somebody asked, how do you say? And maybe he knew and he wanted to check. So he was like, actually it's the same. It's portrait and landscape. So
did you then talk about the differences as well in terms of a portrait as an illustration of a person and landscape?
Yeah, well, that's how it originally came up.
Okay.
Was when we were talking with the brainstorming words, and so we came up with the definition then. Portrait meaning somebody's.
Because presumably the rotation of the paper, the name for the rotation of the paper actually comes from that.
Yeah, presumably. Yeah.
Great.
So I thought it was really good. I thought it was a really nice lesson.
Brilliant.
I think it's all kind of self-contained and a really nice 90-minute it was for me.
Brilliant. We'll
with
have
the
to
writing,
do it again
definitely
as
90 minutes.
a team teacher at some point, because that was great when we
did
it last year, but it was very...
Yeah. That's the other good thing about it. It can work with 20 students and it could work with 2. Yeah. Which is really nice.
Yeah, it's nice to hear it work with 3. That's really... that's great. Yeah. But when we did this lesson last year without a worksheet, we improvised it a lot, didn't we? And the past form stuff was very improvised.
Yeah, that was you totally making it up.
completely thinking, let's have some language.
The language focus somewhere. Yeah, I remember.
But when I was making this workshop, my concern was that it would be too restrictive. From the sounds of it, you didn't feel that when you were using it.
No.
So that's
because it's not restrictive because you need, if you're going to write a story, then you need narrative tenses. So you're not restricting.
Yeah.
I think if you tried to tie the vocabulary, then maybe that would be restricting.
Yeah.
I guess. But I think you do naturally need.
And you need the input on that, yeah. If you're going to go with the story.
If you're going to write a good story,
yeah,
it's going to have. Not necessarily if you're speaking, I suppose. But
well, even then, it'd be nice to encourage it, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks very much, Stuart. That's brilliant.
Anytime.
Super duper.
That's fine.